Okay. We'll talk about that. Welcome to committee. We have two presentations today. Are there any requests for bill draft sponsorships? Seeing none, we'll move right along. Kevin Waring from the Kansas Association of Court Service Officers. Welcome to committee, sir. Thank you for coming. We look forward to hearing from you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, committee members, for giving me the time today. My name is Kevin Waring. I am the Chief Court Services Officer in the 10th Judicial District. Today, I am here in my role as the Legislative Chair for the Kansas Association of Court Services Officers. Court Services Officers, or CSOs, as I'll refer to us through most of my presentation today, work across all 31 judicial districts, working at the discretion of the chief judge in those districts. Our work will vary by district depending on the needs of those courts. Certainly one of our core functions is probation supervision, which I'll talk about more in depth in a minute. However, our duties can and do vary by district depending on those needs. CSOs routinely perform pretrial assessments and supervision, dispute resolution in family court cases, child in need of care work, pre-sentence investigations, specialty court coordination and supervision, whether that be veterans treatment courts, substance abuse treatment courts, family treatment courts. CSOs perform work in those across the state. We conduct risk needs assessments as part of community supervision, which help guide our supervision of those clients, referring them to the appropriate resources, getting them the right help, hopefully in the goal of achieving success while they're on supervision, and then thereafter, after they complete supervision and remain in the community. We, across the state, do some diversion supervision. We will do drug testing as ordered by the courts, and any other task as needed. Typically speaking, CSOs across the state have a really good working relationship with our judges in the district courts. It's not uncommon for CSOs to receive phone calls from judges on the bench or from their chambers asking us to help with a need that they have, to gather some information on a case, on a client, to better inform the courts on hearing of those cases and how to proceed moving forward. Specifically speaking about probation supervision, CSOs supervise those cases in the community for both felony and misdemeanor cases. For adult criminal cases and similar in juvenile cases, CSOs provide services through each phase of those court hearings. After charging, CSOs may perform bond or pretrial assessments. This work may involve the CSO interviewing an individual, perhaps in the jail or in the community, regarding family history, their criminal history, social information, employment or educational information. Again, then that information can be provided to the courts to better help guide those cases. CSOs may supervise the individual on release and or verify requirements of substance abuse testing, evaluation, counseling, or compliance with no contact orders on those cases still pre-conviction when it would be pretrial or bond supervision. It's not uncommon for individuals to be released from custody while those criminal cases are pending. The work of the CSO helps promote community safety while also making appropriate referrals or recommendations to help clients address any identified needs. After conviction, CSOs complete the statutorily required pre-sentence investigation prior to the sentencing hearing. CSOs will review local and national criminal history returns, whether that be the KBI report, the NCIC report, and or local databases with those arrest and or court case information. Criminal records that we receive are commonly incomplete. CSOs are required to look at those returns, and it may only list an arrest on a specific date in a jurisdiction, and CSOs are then required to track down were criminal charges filed. If charges were filed, was anyone convicted of those charges? And if so, then reflecting that on that PSI. The criminal history score is certainly a large piece of the Kansas sentencing guidelines that factors the offense level of a crime and then also that criminal history score. Again, that work is done by CSOs across the state, prepared, given to attorneys prior to sentencing, and then for the court to consider that and then pronounce an appropriate sentence in those cases. CSOs will complete risk needs assessments, typically also prior to sentencing. We identify the appropriate level of supervision if the client is granted probation in the community. CSOs include on the PSI the sentencing range. Again, as I just mentioned, the offense level, the criminal history score, and then what the standard prison sentence would be, what the aggravated sentence would be, and the mitigated sentence. Again, for the court to have that information. PSI writers must stay up to date on current legislative changes and case law to ensure an accurate PSI. As years pass, this work becomes more difficult as the crime and punishments may differ depending on when the offense occurred and when the sentencing has taken place. CSOs work to have that accurate information on the PSI for the court and attorneys to consider prior to sentencing. CSOs are often also tasked with contacting victims prior to sentencing. That contact with the victims may be requesting a victim impact statement and asking if any restitution would be requested at the time of sentencing. CSOs need to have the care and passion when reaching out to victims, explaining the sentencing process, and if they would like to make a statement or a request to the court at the time of sentencing. After sentencing, CSOs may be ordered to supervise the client in the community. Supervision length and conditions will vary depending on the conviction, criminal history, and that risk need assessment score. CSOs work closely with community partners, which would include family members, employers, schools, treatment providers, and the courts to promote that success while on supervision. With the use of evidence-based practices, CSOs work to promote public safety and client success. It's important to note, we as CSOs live in these communities that we work in. So again, our work daily is focused on public safety while also monitoring those court orders and promoting success for anyone assigned to us to supervise. We CSOs are required to complete and maintain certifications for a wide range of skills, depending on the assigned workload for that CSO. Certifications are required for the juvenile and adult risk needs assessments. And here in the past couple of years, the Sentencing Commission has enacted a specific risk need assessment for women and a specific risk need assessment for males. So again, CSOs have to be trained now on both of those risk needs assessments as well. Additionally, CSOs are trained in the effective practice and community supervision, as we refer to EPICS. That's a structured approach for our office visits when we meet with clients in the community. We use these evidence-based tools to help ensure goals are being set, monitored, and working on any behavior change needs, again, to achieve hopefully that successful release from supervision and then successful maintaining of those individuals in the community without returning to the criminal justice system. Motivational interviewing is a technique CSOs are trained on to use, which is a practice of how to have an open conversation with individuals, encouraging clients to provide full and honest discussion to help build a professional and positive relationship while also getting information beneficial to that successful assessment or case supervision. The work of changing an individual's behavior is difficult. Again, there are difficulties depending whether it's an adult that may have a lengthier criminal history or a young juvenile, which is just hard to get through, and changing their viewpoints and their priorities at that point. So again, depending on what case and who it is that's assigned to us, there are different challenges along the way. We understand each client is unique, and success can certainly look different for each individual that we work with. Touched on this a little bit, but training for new staff to achieve all those certifications that I had previously mentioned is over 150 hours. After initial training, staff are required to maintain certification with booster trainings as well. So training new employees is time-consuming and certainly expensive, but very important. Our organization, KSO, supports maintaining competitive pay for CSOs to reduce the loss of our experienced staff members that are already trained and losing that experience to other employers. The workload of a district may allow for CSOs to be specialized in subjects, such as having dedicated staff to write those PSIs, do domestic family work, juvenile work, or sync child in need of care work as well. However, in other districts, CSOs may be a jack of all trades and be trained in all of those assessments and cover all of the needs for the district court. As an example, my home court in Johnson County in the 10th Judicial District, we have specialized teams that will do adult probation supervision. We have teams that just write PSIs, a team that does juvenile work. But just recently at my fall conference, I was reminded my colleagues out in Western Kansas, they cover all of this work across multiple counties. In fact, one of my colleagues reminded me that she also works in the Mountain Time Zone for part of her work week, which again was a good reminder for myself. Again, the work of a CSO is done as a function of our local district courts, reporting directly to the chief judge, and the courts holding jurisdiction over the cases that we work with. Finally, I wanted to highlight a few recent legislative and process changes for CSOs. In the past few years, legislation allowed for dual supervision to be consolidated and for CSOs to work with parole and community corrections to eliminate dual supervision of clients in the community, so we can work with our other community supervision partners, have one agency and officer take the lead and do that supervision, and we can coordinate and give updates to the other agency who may also have a case. We're hopeful that this work will continue and continue to improve, and again, at the benefit of that client, only having to report to one person, but not jeopardizing any community safety in the way. There's also currently work being done on standardizing probation conditions. Again, so regardless of supervision, if it's parole, community corrections, court services, that there is one standard language, one standard set of conditions to make it easier for clients to understand what's expected of them on their cases, and again, hopefully to lead to success while not increasing any chance of public safety issue. Court service officers continue to work and expand their role in treatment court operations. As I mentioned previously, CSOs help supervise participants. We coordinate the court sessions and manage grants for juvenile and adult treatment courts. This would include abuse, substance abuse, behavioral, family court, and veterans courts across the state. The goal is to target specific needs with case management and wrap services around those individuals to get them the help that they need to promote success and leave them in the community, graduate the program, and continue success after that. All CSOs are now utilizing a centralized case management system, which will help with data collection and information sharing. Our district in the 10th was last to come on board with that. So we were the stragglers. We're on board now, and hopefully that will continue to grow and allow for clearer pictures of the population we're working with, the success we're having, and areas of improvement. I did want to note, KSO provided some written testimony today. Specifically in that written testimony are some fiscal year 2024 numbers of the work completed by CSOs. I won't get into those numbers specifically, but hopefully you have that. If you have any questions here today or down the road, please don't hesitate to reach out for any of those numbers. Finally, I'm happy to answer any questions. I greatly appreciate the time that you gave me today, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes, Representative James.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Hey, I'm brand new to the committee, so is the CSO, is that the same as a probation officer?
Yes, we are probation officers. Court service officers are probation officers.
Are they the same? How does that monitor? Who monitors the probation officers? And how much leniency do they have if they have a set program of certain things they do? So, for example, if someone's made it almost all the way to the end and they've done really well and they've gone through their substance abuse course, if that's the case, and they're down to their last week or two, and they decide not to give them a urinalysis, I mean, is there a program monitoring the probation officer CSOs?
Yes, thank you for the question, Chairman and committee member. So court service officers, we are probation officers for the judicial branch. So we work for the Office of Judicial Administration, working locally for our courts. There are other supervision entities for district courts. There's community corrections, which is through KDOC, and then certainly parole officers. So cases that are assigned to us as court service officers to supervise, it's driven a lot of times depending on the risk needs assessments. If it's a felony case and they score high risk, those commonly go to community corrections. However, misdemeanor cases, regardless of how they score, so all misdemeanor cases, and then low and moderate risk felonies are typically our population with court services. The supervision depends on that local district court, what conditions of probation that judge ordered for the individual, and what the expectation is of that judge. You know, depending on the judge and the court, that CSO is going to know what the expectation is. Sometimes if it's a repeat offender, for a lack of a better term, a judge may say, if this individual has issues, I want to see him or her relatively quickly. They have that rapport with that individual. If it's a standard case, CSOs typically will do internal sanctions if there are violations. That could be community service, it could be a substance abuse evaluation, it could be a jail sanction, and we'll continue supervision and hopefully have success after that. But it could be at some point in time, the CSO says, this isn't working, we have violations, and that CSO feels it needs to be brought back in front of the court. And so the CSO will coordinate with the prosecutor, or they'll submit their affidavit directly to the court, depending on jurisdiction of how that looks like. It's a little different. But ultimately, then the judge will call a court hearing to address those alleged violations with that individual in a court hearing. Yeah.
Representative Smith.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple questions tied together here. Do your CSOs have to have a college degree? And is that college degree a social worker's degree?
Yes, Chairman and committee member, thank you for the question. Yes, CSOs at this time, when we post positions, are required to have a college degree. And typically we do look for a social services degree, whether that's sociology, a criminology degree, psychology. Now, depending on the area that's hiring the position, they may expand that out. We certainly have some really good CSOs that have degrees that isn't in a social services field, but we usually look, and that's typically who's applying for our positions. But yes, at this time, CSOs are required to have a college degree.
Can I go one more?
You may.
Yeah. On your 150 hours of training, is it all in a classroom, or do you follow somebody around watching them, or how does that work?
Yes, Chairman and committee member, thank you. Of those 150 hours, those are predominantly in a classroom, either in person or through online learning, through the providers that the judicial branch, the Office of Judicial Administration, they, set those up for us for our staff to get certified. However, there is then time where you will practice those skills and you have to audio record yourself, a video record yourself, working with individuals. We send them in so that way they can see us in the somewhat real-life setting. Again, it's a little odd with that audio or video recording. Practicing those skills that they've taught us for them to say, okay, you have graduated, you've met your need.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Representative Neely, did you have a question?
You referred to that you were the last to come online. I'm assuming it was the Odyssey program. Is that what you guys are on? And if so, is it working like you anticipated?
Yes, thank you for the question. Yeah, that is what I was referring to. Johnson County was the last judicial district across the state to come online. The court management system is Odyssey. We as CSOs use a separate system. It's called Enterprise Supervision. That system is what we enter our notes into. That's where we keep all of our information for the clients that we work with. They are integrated. They work together. But yes, to your question of is it working as it anticipated? Yeah, for CSOs, that's what I can speak to. It is working for us. There is a learning curve, certainly, but I think we're adjusting well and are on board and moving forward with it.
Yes, Representative Carmichael, did you have questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You'll be glad to know that Representative Smith made many of my inquiries, which will speed us right along today.
Wonderful.
I thought you would think so. However, my first question is more one of procedure. In today's materials, we do have Mr. Waring's testimony under his name. It's a Waring PDF. Then there's a Waring 01 PDF that contains information submitted by Laura Howard of DCF. My presumption is those materials go with tomorrow's hearing rather than this conferee, but I want to make sure that I'm reviewing the right things.
We're looking.
I'm referring to
We're
the
looking
C
at
drive materials
Yeah,
that
I get it. I get it. Yes, Representative Smith, you want to speak to that?
No, not to that, no.
Well, in fact, Representative Schlegensiepen has the document in question right there in front of him, if he could loan it to you, Mr. Chair. Oh, I found it. I found his testimony in the S drive, as well as the document he holds in his hand, which looks like tomorrow's.
My written
I'm free.
testimony should be on CACSO letterhead, Kansas Association.
It is, and I have it in hand. There's another file that is attributed to your name, but it's from Laura Howard, and she gets paid a lot more than you do.
Yeah.
We're gonna get to the bottom of this.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
In due course, thank you. If we have the answer, I'll defer, elsewise I'll proceed.
Ms. Howard is not today, so you would inquire only about what he submitted.
Well, certainly. Okay. Mr. Waring, periodically I receive emails, I don't know if they're from you or from your organization, that, and maybe it's just active CSOs who are concerned about the pay, advancement opportunities and the like, and you've addressed some of that. Yesterday in the Judiciary Committee, the Chief Justice told us about what's described as lawyer deserts in Kansas, places where there's not enough defense lawyers, not enough prosecutors, not enough people to do wills and trusts and slip and fall cases and everything else. Are there vacancies in your profession, in your pay slots across the state? Are they more prevalent in the western Kansas than, say, in Wichita, where I'm from, or Johnson County, where you're from? Can you give us a picture of those sorts of issues, particularly as it might relate to pay, retention, recruitment?
Yeah, Chairman, thank you for the question. Several years ago, there was a budget increase for CSOs that brought us up to market value. Over the past several years, we've been supported with cost of living increases. And that's what we're hoping will continue moving forward so we don't fall behind again. I believe our organization, CACSO, is very pleased with where we're at with those recent advancements. We do feel like we have very competitive pay right now that we are no longer behind our peers in community supervision. That really puts us at risk of losing those talented CSOs that come on with us, get trained.
May I interrupt for just a moment with your leave? Was that part of the overall increase in benefits for the judicial branch, or was that a separate? I thought it was part of an entire package, if you know.
I can ask.
Don't worry about it.
To get confirmation. I believe it was all the same.
That's my
3 or 4
recollection.
years ago, there was a big bump for non-judicial employees to bring them up to market value. So
And at this point, you all are, at least by the governor's budget, hopefully in line for about a 2.5 cost of living increase when inflation's running at 2.7%. The state health insurance plan gets more expensive every year.
yes, yes, and we would
I
certainly.
feel your pain.
We certainly appreciate any consideration, and we're very thankful for what we've gotten over the last several years of that bringing us up to market value and the recent cost of livings. That's certainly helpful and appreciated by our membership. To your question about vacancies across the state and specifically Western Kansas, I don't have that information with me. There are certainly vacancies, but I don't know that those are caused because of any lack of competitive pay or lack of qualified applicants for being CSO, such as the desert that is starting to develop with the lawyers and that concern. Certainly, I can inquire with our membership, and if there are those concerns, I can reach back out with that information. But at this time, I don't think that is a concern for CSOs across the state.
If it's not a concern, I don't want to be concerned. I do very much appreciate what you and your colleagues do. It's a very important part of the criminal justice system that many of us completely overlook and don't realize how important it is to supervise people, but also to have good pre-sentence investigations and evaluations so that judges can make the right decisions. And so without what you all do, we wouldn't have nearly as effective a criminal justice system, so I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. Do you have any data, or if you don't have the actual data, what's your own experience in terms of doing the PSIs that you do? What percentage of those offenders that you're preparing PSIs for have substance abuse problems?
Chairman, thank you for the question. I certainly don't have that data with me. I can inquire with our support at the Office of Judicial Administration to see if they have any of that available. From my experiences, I would hate to muster a guess to try to be accurate with what that percent is on those PSIs. Certainly, substance abuse, whether it's alcohol or drug issues, certainly lead to other crimes that are not just substance abuse related. They're certainly connected there. But I'm sorry, I don't want to muster a guess and be inaccurate, so I apologize. I don't have that for you.
But it is true that that's one of the things that you as a PSI investigator will look into for anyone to see if there's a substance abuse problem.
Certainly. As part of a felony sentencing, we'll do the risk needs assessment. And of those assessments, there are domains that look at substance abuse. So if those needs arise and are shown on those risk needs, if they are placed on supervision with us, that is certainly something early on we would want to target and make sure there's support there for that individual to promote success on supervision, whether that be with a full substance abuse evaluation or make sure we drug and alcohol test them as part of supervision to ensure that that's not an issue or concern while they're supervised for us.
And my second series of questions is related to that somewhat. You talked about treatment courts, and is that a substance abuse treatment, or are there other treatment courts?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. There are multiple treatment courts across the state. There are specific drug and alcohol treatment courts. That would be the primary goal, is to address that drug or alcohol problem. So the teams for those treatment courts would, be made up of supervision officers, substance abuse professionals, to really target and hopefully promote success. There are other treatment courts, veterans treatment courts, a family court, behavioral health court, more of the mental health needs clients, but there is a lot of overlap there. Someone certainly may have behavioral health needs and end up in that court, but also need help with substance abuse. And certainly those courts would help address that and get them support for that.
And how does one get funneled into one of these treatment courts? And is this pre-adjudication or after adjudication, during adjudication? When does it happen?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. That's a great question. That depends on the court, whether it would be pre-conviction or post-conviction. Many juvenile courts are pre, so they'll be the IIP, immediate intervention programming, commonly referred to as diversion. Adult criminal courts, there are some diversion treatment courts and also some post-conviction treatment courts as well. How clients are referred there would vary by the specific court and by the judicial district. I know specifically for our jurisdiction in Johnson County, referrals can be made by attorneys, by supervision officers, by treatment providers in the community. If they think they have an individual that would benefit from that program, they can make that referral. So assessments and qualifications then to see if they're eligible could be done, and then ultimately a recommendation to the judge to then consider ordering them into the program. But how that looks like across the state could vary a little bit. So I don't have all that information, but typically that's what it looks like.
And is your office sort of the gateway to these treatment courts? In other words, if I'm an attorney representing a client and I think that this client would do well in a treatment court, I ask for that evaluation, and that evaluation, is that done by the CSOs?
Yes, specific in Johnson County, for multiple of our treatment courts, our office, we do have a CSO that's dedicated to receiving those referrals, following up, getting all the information to take it to the treatment team for everyone to staff the case to see if that individual would, be a good candidate for that program. Those teams consist of prosecutors, defense attorneys, treatment providers, supervision officers. So that way, hopefully everyone understands, like, hey, this is an individual that needs this help, this care, and they would be a good fit for this program.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions for the conferee? Yes, Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Going back to the chair's comments, in western Kansas, it's pretty thin as far as getting help and so forth. So if a youth needed drug treatment or something like that, would they send them to Kansas City, or what would they do in that case?
Yeah, Chairman and committee member, thank you for the question. Certainly, that individual may need to travel a distance, but anymore, there are a lot of resources available through telehealth as well. So an individual in a more rural area may be able to connect with a provider and get that help, that evaluation, that support in their home, their community, their setting without traveling as far. But that's certainly an issue, especially in more rural areas, finding the right provider, distance, cost. That's certainly something we always look at, and we try to break down those barriers as supervision officers to get them that help and support. So we'll, game plan with a family, however best we can to get, specifically with juveniles, that support, because they are dependent on mom, dad, family member, friend, getting them to those counselings if they do have to travel in person.
Are there any further questions from the committee? If not, we'll let you go, and thank you very much for coming and talking to us today. And
thank you for the time.
Next on our agenda is Ms. Block, our research analyst, is going to talk to us. Oh, you don't want to talk today?
It's not that I don't want
And I know. Okay.
I just can't talk about this before.
Okay, all right. So we've decided to put that over till tomorrow or next week. Is there anything else that any of the committee members wants to raise? Yeah, yes, John, Representative Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Were we able to figure out the documents that's on for today with Laura Howard? Is that for our witness tomorrow's testimony? And then we have a CSG report that's on there for tomorrow. Maybe that was what we were thinking about talking about today. I don't know. I just want to try to be prepared and read the right materials on the right day.
Ms. Block, you want to address that?
Yes, I can clarify on that. So the mislabeled testimony for today that's attributed to Mr. Waring that is not his is actually the annual Juvenile Crisis Intervention Center report that KSA 65536 directs the Secretary for DCF to provide to the House Committee on Corrections. That was emailed to the committee assistant email, I believe, yesterday. And so it was uploaded today for us to access, even though it's not being presented. The intent to present today from our office was the interim committee report from the Jennings Joint Committee on Corrections and Juvenile Justice Oversight. But that has not yet had committee approval, and so the department's hesitant to present that.
I'm on track. So just my final question is then, should we anticipate additional testimony to be loaded up for tomorrow's conferee? If what we have from Ms. Howard is not for tomorrow, then presumably we'll have additional testimony to review before tomorrow? Or if not, I don't have to worry about this.
So at this time, we don't have Secretary Howard coming to present at any time. The report is just for your review. We will be hearing from Stephanie Uberall tomorrow, and then I believe Deputy Secretary Milner will be coming. I don't know if she's going to be speaking from slides or if she's going to have written testimony.
Okay, but she is from DCF, the juvenile part of DCF, or is that something different?
Deputy Secretary Milner is with the Department of Corrections.
Okay, that's right. Okay. Thank you for your patience with me, Mr. Chair. I was confused as always.
Thank you for clarifying it for everyone. Right. If there's nothing more for the committee, we will adjourn and see everybody tomorrow.